answer it now, which I usually don't do, but the emotion of standing behind those lights requires this. I first want to thank you for being here, for coming out in the cold and the dark and the stillness to bring warmth and light and music. And I thank you for not only doing this year, but for doing it for the last 10 of the 20 years that Transgender Day of Remember this T-Door has been in existence. That is an achievement, and you should be proud as a community. I'll first confess to you that I am in many ways the wrong person to be speaking to you on T-Door. First, though I am a transgender woman, I have had and have immense privileges. I have the support of a loving family. Some of them over here, they're up there, I think, in the child care space. You probably heard the 3-year-old earlier. I've had some of the best education on the planet. I am healthy. I have had access to affirming health care. I am and have mostly been in my life economically secure. I am and have mostly been physically secure, though I have myself experienced violence and have sadly tasted my own blood from it more than once. I have, and have mostly, felt like I could safely contact the police when I was hurt or otherwise a victim of other crime. But most tangibly of all, I am, like nearly all of you here, a white person of conventionally expressed gender, and this country, this world we live in, notwithstanding the words of the song, sadly was built around us and for us in so many ways. And I am not, like most of those we remember, a person of color. More specifically, I am not a trans woman or a non-binary person of color. Flipping the script from what I have just told you about myself, I am not someone who, while experiencing all the daily aggressions and oppressions faced by trans women, a person of color, has also, statistically speaking, more likely gone through life economically insecure, with limited educational opportunities, a lack of access to affirming health care, and not feeling like they could even call for help from the police or the authorities when they were unsafe. And yet, I said yes to be here and to speak here because we also cannot burden the trans communities that we collectively, as all privileged Americans, have wounded and allowed to suffer, with the responsibility of always being the ones to speak out and educate about the wrongs they have suffered through our actions and our inactions. I'm here because I can give you an entry and access point to some of those experiences, but we all have to do the work after tonight to turn remembrance into revolutionary change in the future. So, just last night, as it happens, I was taking the commuter rail from Haverhill, where I live, to Boston to join a community dinner for trans feminine people, mostly people of color, hosted by Bagley, the Boston Alliance for Gay, Lesbian, and Trans Youth. Our train got stuck, actually, my train got stuck, for over an hour outside of Lawrence. And at a certain point, I sadly knew that I had missed the dinner. And it made me sad. I wanted to see friends there, people there. Around me, though, on a slightly more full than usual train car coming from Haverhill at that time, I heard people loudly complaining, I can understand why on a certain level, how they had spent, I kid you not, $1,000 on tickets to the Elton John Farewell Tour concert in Boston that night. And they were stuck on this train. Now, for my own part, I was not thrilled to be out $11 for my ticket to Boston. I was myself hungry and not too happy to wait in the cold in Lawrence when I realized that I wasn't going to make it to Boston to turn around and wait in Lawrence on the platform worse would it be for any of them to be on the car of that train? If they could even get on it in the first place, because $11 is not nothing. And I knew for myself that there was some very yummy leftover homemade lentil soup made by a lovely woman who's over there somewhere, waiting for me whenever I did manage to get home. And I was cold and felt pretty alone on that platform in Lawrence. And at the time, I couldn't help but remember that Lawrence was one of the only cities in Massachusetts that voted last year to take away my equal rights as a trans person, just last year. But my coat was warm. And though I am trans, my skin is white. And if something happened to me on that platform, I could call the police with so much less fear than other people. I share this with you not to complain about a disappointing evening last night, but to illustrate some of the layers of what it's like to be a living, breathing trans person in Massachusetts in the Gallagher winter. I've always felt that part of what it means to remember at Tudor is not to stop at just remembering the list of names. These were not just names. I think of this as like positive versus negative space. We remember the names, and we remember some of the stories of how the people behind the names died. But that is the tip of the iceberg of the lives that they led. A smattering of letters together that make up their names, a few words about the times and places of their deaths, does not encapsulate their lives in all their challenges, all their joys, and the everything in between of daily life, like community dinners or broken down trains. It is in that everything in between space where all of us here really can make a difference most in the future. If we and others like us at vigils all around the country tonight and in coming days act, if we act, we can hope to have slightly fewer names added to this butcher's bill of violence and death at the next Tudor. But beyond that, under the tip of that iceberg of the reading of the names on one night of a calendar year, we can make a tangible difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of trans people still living in America every single day. First and foremost, know that trans and gender expansive, gender non-conforming for people in extreme need know, most of all, better than anyone, what they need and what those in their communities need. If you have the means, I urge you to contribute in any way that you can to the Transgender Emergency Fund of Massachusetts, a small trans-led nonprofit based in Worcester, but serving the entire trans community of Massachusetts. Their focus is on helping trans people out of homelessness, or helping trans people in crisis from becoming homeless. They provide rent and utility assistance directly to trans people in need to keep them warm. Access to a safe place to live is among the top factors in helping trans people avoid violence and avoid death. If you want to give to the Trans Emergency Fund, my own organization on the steering committee of the Mass Trans Political Coalition is collecting donations for them as a fiscal sponsor. Not taking any of the money collected, it's just that we have online payments set up and they don't. If you Google MTPC and go to our site, you'll find a Transgender Day of Remembrance tab with a donation button. Second, beyond just giving money, I urge you to do more of what I know many of you already do, which is your activism. When I was running for Congress, reporters would often ask me, particularly like national reporters, what is the transgender agenda? And I would tell them what I am going to now tell you. Our agenda is the same as poor and working class people everywhere, but even more so. If you want to prevent violence against trans people, then go to the State House and lobby for taxing the wealthy their fair share, so as to spend more money on services that we all depend on, but transgender people, particularly trans people of color, depend on even more. A trans person is much less likely to be able to afford that $11 train ride. For most, even $2 T rides are really going to add up, and most of them can't afford a car. And when we miss the trains because they are broken down, most of us are not going to be missing out on Elton John. But most of them, are going to run late for a low-wage hourly job where we are more likely to be discriminated against, especially if we are black or brown. Judge and support your representatives by what they are doing to raise wages, invest in transportation and affordable housing. Trans people, especially trans people of color, are the ones who need all that most. And third, give of your visible, physical, allyship and time however you can. Some people can dismiss what it means to have a trans flag or a pin on a backpack or a store window, but let me tell you, it does matter, and it is way better than nothing. Once upon a time when I was a bit younger and in a more vulnerable place in my own transition, even I, as a white, privileged trans person, can remember being very scared when my wife and I would be on a long road trip and we'd have to stop in a town to get a meal or heaven forbid, use the bathroom. On the off chance that we saw a little rainbow or even a trans flag, I can't tell you the relief that we felt. And that's us. Not black or brown, not poor, not an immigrant, not visibly gender nonconforming. Symbols do matter. And what you do with your privilege and your presence as mostly, not entirely mostly, white people can matter. So much of the greatest vulnerability to violence and death for trans people here in Massachusetts, and let us never forget that TDOR started in Massachusetts with one of our own, is experienced by black and brown people. So therefore, so much of the solution to what you see before you is being anti-racist in our own lives and supporting and following the lead of those in our communities who are on the front lines of that violence. What do I mean by that? I mean that when there's a Black Lives Matter protest, show up. I mean that when the State Communities Act is being debated at the State House, make sure your representative is on the right side. Practice de-escalating bystander intervention in situations involving black or brown people. Don't just instinctively call the police. These are all things you can do. Finally, as we honor the memories of our dead with action, please also carry through all this that we are not, we trans people, whether we're black or brown or white, U.S. born or immigrant, rich or poor, none of us are one-dimensional victims of tragedy and oppression. We appreciate how those of you who are not trans gather here in Vigil, and we need your allyship because we are relatively few. But we are not weak. Even as we struggle, even when we die, we are strong. We are strong for what we have faced, some much more so than others. Barriers and obstacles and challenges that few in this country can even understand or around the world, and yet we persist, we survive, and more of us thrive every year. To our fallen, rest in power. And to all of you here, thank you